Thanks for coming. This is just an update on what's been happening with Oracle 5.5, released December 15th. My name is Bill Papp, for those who I haven't met before. I'm the principal MySQL sales consultant for Oracle in this region. I live in the Boston suburb of New Hampshire, so coming down here is sometimes stressful, probably more stressful than other things we do and stuff. But as many of you know, 5.5 came out well after a 2-year hiatus, I guess, between 5.1 and 5.5, and some major changes, enhancements in performance, and all that we'll get to here. So this is just a little thing here, but just some overviews. I know many of you use it and stuff, but you may not kind of understand the footprint that MySQL has. 12 million product installations, still averaging 60,000 plus downloads a day. It's obviously part of the LAMP stack and all, and remains available in GPL and some commercial editions, and I'll kind of show some of the offerings with the commercial editions and stuff. And down below, as you can see, the more popular users of MySQL: Facebook, Google, YouTube. 9 of the top 10 websites in the world are using MySQL in some way, shape, or form underneath the covers, and continue to also add back to the community with patches and enhancements and some nifty utilities here and there as well. So the LAMP stack, for those who are probably very familiar with this, Linux, Apache, MySQL, and a programming language starting with P, PHP, Perl, and Python. But in reality, that's starting to expand a little bit because MySQL is becoming everywhere. It's running on not only Linux and Unix, but various flavors of Linux, also Windows, Mac OS. And the languages are now branching out to Ruby, Java. Many of the customers and users I talk to are doing a lot of Java development, as well as some C#, some Visual Studio stuff as well. So there's a lot of options out there if you're looking for a particular project as to do you want to put it on Windows, or maybe you want to do the GUI on Windows and the back end Linux. That's all very real and very doable with MySQL.
Java probably started to be MySQL language even before 2000.
I'm sorry?
Java probably started to work on MySQL even before 2000.
Yes, yes. They've been connected
One of the first.
All the way around, yeah. I think PHP and Java, particularly for the web and for other things, are very, very popular. But it's everywhere. With any new language coming out here, inevitably there's some sort of technology or connector into MySQL. Here's one that when I first saw it was kind of surprising. It's number 3 most deployed database out there, between Oracle as number 1 and MySQL Server is number 2, and then the others. And the thing that's interesting is this was a survey done, I think, around last summer by Oracle Marketing, and was asking out there the customer base as to of the projects you have, how many are currently deployed, how many are planning to deploy next year, or not to deploy. Some of them were just simply test machines or development environments, and this is sort of the breakdown that came out. So it continues to be very popular, and a lot of demands. And with those, some of the features that we're going to talk about were put into the product to accommodate some of those requests. Oracle continues to invest in open source technologies. Some things here may or may not be surprising to this community. Obviously, with the Sun acquisition, you got MySQL and Java, NetBeans and stuff, and some of the other technologies that continue to thrive within the developer communities as well as within Oracle are here. So Oracle plans to continue investment in MySQL. There's been a lot of theories and conjectures and everything out there as to, they're going to buy in MySQL and kill it off and try and get everyone to use Oracle. That's not the plan. It turns out that MySQL is extremely good at what it does, and the real goal is to continue being able to do that. The focus areas continue to be primarily the web, embedded in telecom. I don't know if many of you are aware, but there are a lot of devices and things, customers I talk to, that are embedding MySQL into their routers, their switches, cell phones. There are some large corporations that use it as an embedded database for marketing. When they send out their catalog or things like that, it's storing the information in MySQL. So it's very interesting when I hear from customers. It takes a while just to really understand how they're using the product and how they think it could be enhanced, or in some cases some of the issues they might be having and how they could be overcome. In addition to the LAMP stack, MySQL continues to really push for Windows, and in fact 5.5, lots of work has been done to make Windows a much more viable and sound and fast performing platform for MySQL. And then along with developing, promoting, supporting MySQL, the MySQL Community Edition source libraries, GPL, is all still available, dev.mysql.com. So the customers, and this is just a few of the, I think more than 400 or 500 blue chip customers that are using it every day. But the thing about this is it's not only web anymore, really. As mentioned, several vendors are embedding it into their products that you buy. You may not be aware that there's a database underneath the covers. SaaS and hosting continue to be growing very quickly. A lot of folks have great ideas for putting applications out on the web and being able to put them out there for everybody. Telecom is one of the natural areas where parts of the MySQL technology was born, really. Things like cluster came out of telecom and continues to grow within that arena. And now the biggest thing we're seeing now is enterprise. And some of the enhancements in 5.5 with things like pluggable authentication stuff were born out of requests for being able to use MySQL as more of an enterprise database. So it's growing on several fronts. So enough of the overview here, getting down into the technology. Many of you have probably seen this slide pretty much as far as the architecture. Just to kind of reiterate, the top is all the connectors and various ways you can talk to MySQL. Going through your connection pools, your interfaces, parsers, optimizations, buffers, and all of these, I'm sure many of you are aware, have all kinds of parameters and options that you can tweak and tune and use to really customize MySQL. And then underneath the covers is the multiple pluggable storage engines, where you can have InnoDB, MyICM, InnoDB being good for things like transactions and sort of traditional database activities, MyICM more kind of born around web activities. Then we have things like cluster, which is actually technically NDB, which is the engine used for the MySQL cluster product we talked about back in December here. And then there's some other engines here as far as being able to do archives or being able to run in memory. These are very specific for certain applications that do give you an advantage. And the one thing that I tell people, particularly folks that aren't really familiar with MySQL, the thing that kind of blows your mind is these engines are all running in parallel and they're all running within the same schema. So right now I'm working with some customers that had their tables in MyICM and they're converting over to InnoDB, but there's only say 2 or 3 of 10 or 12 tables. And it's very doable to just isolate those 2 tables, convert them over to InnoDB, and then continue on with your testing, and they are seeing performance enhancements. So what's new in 5.5 here? Well, first of all, InnoDB becomes the default engine. So prior releases, 5.1, 5.0, if you said create table and listed your columns and didn't specify an engine, it would put it into MyICM. That's now changed into InnoDB. And with that, you do get ACID compliance, foreign key support, much better crash recovery with InnoDB, much less contention for locking and things, high transaction volumes and stuff. Some things have been focused on are improved availability with the addition of semi-synchronous replication, and I'll touch on that in a little bit. Replication heartbeat, slave file sync options that have been expanded, all in support of being able to make sure that replication is performing solidly, and that in the event that your slave goes down in replication, that when it comes back up, you're not going to be having problems in corrupting and stuff. Automatic relay log as well. And then also usability. That was a big focus with this release here. The addition of signal, resignal, which is a more industry standard way of correcting for error conditions and going around those. More partitioning options. If you are using partitions, we've expanded the types of partitioning that you can do within the database. Server filtering, slave-side type conversions, again, in more support of replication. Individual log flushing, pluggable authentication, again, gearing towards those that want to authenticate through LDAP or Active Directory, Kerberos, some of the various schemes that are out there. We've also added sort of in support of our enterprise monitor, which I'll show a little bit of in a little bit, performance schema, which captures all the metrics that's going on with your servers, and you're able to display or talk to those. So the focus has been better performance, better scalability, recovery. Specifically, a lot of work has been done with metadata locking within the transactions. We've split out the lock open mutex. So what that really is if your programmer looked at the code, they've made it so that there's not as much contention with the lock open mutex, eliminated lock alarm and lock thread count as bottlenecks, and really took a hard look at the architecture and made sure that where there were bottlenecks and hotspots, those things were rectified. Also performance scalability in Windows and 64-bit architectures. And within InnoDB, there have been the addition of multiple buffer pool instances, more rollback segments, so in the event of a crash, your recovery time is much less than it was in the 5.0 or 5.1 code line. Things like purge scheduling, additional mutex workings, and improved recovery times really kind of boils down to that we took out the 4-cylinder engine and put in the Hemi. That's really what it kind of came out to. InnoDB multiple buffer pools. I really like this slide. Allows you to kind of see visually that instead of having a single-threaded buffer pool, it's now 64 in and outs. So the data flows much faster through the engines. And that's kind of resulted in a lot of enhancements in these benchmarks here. So as the development's going on with each new point release, enhancements, benchmarks have been done. This one in Linux read-only. You see pretty much the biggest thing is as the number of databases continue to increase, the transactions per second do not degrade as quickly as they had in the 5.1 code line. Again, going to a lot of the work underneath the covers with the mutual exclusion locks and what have you. And then in read-write, same sort of thing. There is some degradation as you add more database connections, transactions per second, but it's not nearly as dire as the 5.1 code line. Scaling on multi-core, this is one thing where I talk to customers or work with customers, and they're running their database on an 8-way box, and they can't get beyond a certain threshold, and it turns out they are running 5.0 or 5.1. A lot of work has been done to now take advantage of the multiple cores in the 5.5 code line. It scales near linearly, so those of you that may be running on some of the newer quad cores and multiple core technologies are going to actually see advantage being taken of the 5.5. It actually in 5.1, if you had those machines, it actually worked against you, because as you added more cores, you would get less transactions per second. And then read-only for InnoDB and MyISAM. This is a great enhancement here. Scales kind of goes hand in hand with the multi-core thing. The scalability for the read-only for OLTP InnoDB is greatly increased.
Why did it flatline at the end there?
I don't know. I think they might have just ran out of cores. I don't know. This was, let's see, it was a 2X SSD drives, 48 cores. Yeah, it looks like around 30. It's sort of flatline there. Might have been something else at that point. Was kind of I/O or something. Yeah. Big focus with 5.5 has been to improve the Windows platform, improve the benchmarks, work with things like our connector, .NET connectors and stuff out of the box. There's no lock-in, no OIA, use of OS of choice. So really, if you want to run on Windows, it's not as much of a problem as the older code line. A lot of work has been done again to take advantage of, I think, much of the threading in Windows that didn't agree with the older code line, and that's been worked on. So you have your number of database connections, again, as they increase, your transactions per second stay fairly much the same, a lot more throughput. And same thing with read writes. Also for Java developers, a lot of companies I'm talking to are writing their own in-house apps with Java. There's been a lot of improvement in what the cost per transaction is here in 5.1. These are relative, I believe these are like CPU time ratios that are being used here for read-only, read-write, and a mixed environment. And over time, with the 5.1 built in, and then the 5.1 plug-in, and now with 5.5, there have been some, things like at least a 20% or more gain in improvement with the 5.5 code line.
So what is the one? Yeah, it's like, what is the unit?
I think it's a ratio. I think what they did is they
Ratio
took the CPU clock times. They were measuring the CPU clock times for the transaction. And so they took that and then divided it by the CPU clock time for the 5.5, and you get a ratio as to how much one was over the other. And then same thing with the PHP. Actually, even a more dramatic improvement as far as the cost or how efficient the new code line is with PHP applications.
So how many transactions per gigahertz, something like that?
Yes, yes. Multiple rollback segments for crash recovery in InnoDB. In 5.1, it's just one only, and very much a bottleneck, so that's been multiplexed, kind of expanded out to 128. Sort of like the highway here. Your data is being written in parallel, so it's going to speed up the transactions. Sysbench performance has been from, in one case, from a 7-hour recovery into 14 minutes. And this is going to help downtime and any sort of crashes as they occur. And it's just another metric. This one done in a data warehouse situation with it's like a 98 gig database, and here the performance, and there's a 10x recovery in 5.5 over 5.1. Just some feedback here as to what folks are saying about 5.5. Everyone from Craigslist to Mark Callahan at Facebook have been keeping us honest as far as the development and the improvements that were there. So with the enterprise version of MySQL, as opposed to the GPL, you get the, for the GPL, there's a database and there's also Workbench available for those that you can go to dev.mysql and download. If you pay for the commercial license, you also get some other additional technologies like enterprise backup and enterprise monitor, and of course support for the product.
But MySQL Workbench was always free.
What's that?
MySQL Workbench was always free.
Right, that is available, but it's also as part of the subscription as well. So if you buy a subscription license, there are licenses of that built in. But you're right, there is a commercial version and a.
Is there any difference between?
Yeah, there are some features in the
yeah.
enterprise version that are available in the community version.
Right.
But nothing, it's not like crippleware or anything. I think for a while there was
so.
Printing wasn't, I forget if printing is still something that's a 4-pay
No, I think
feature.
it's more like schema analysis, that type of thing, I thought.
Yeah, but you can still do like forward and reverse engineering
Yeah.
schemas in the community version, so it's very robust. It's
Okay.
not crippleware at all in the community version. It's just there's extra features in the enterprise version.
Have you been has anyone been using Workbench on a regular basis or? Yeah. I've actually talked to some very large customers and they're showing me what they're doing, and the first thing to do is pull out Workbench and show it. It's like, wow, that's really cool. Also, so that's what's there. MySQL Enterprise Monitor is also part of the commercial offering. And what this is a dashboard, really. In fact, I think I have it running in the back here, so I can bring out, just as an overview, a dashboard where you can monitor all your servers, what's happening, the events, the drivers, rules, identifying problems before they occur, and then just making it easier to do more with less, really. So let me see if I can, hopefully it's still running here. So, yeah, so here's actually a live demo of our monitor on one of our servers here. And this is running in IE right now. So across the top here, or down on the left-hand side, we have the servers, what they are. Some are clusters you can monitor. You can group them by, are they development machines, production machines, replicated machines. And then across the top, we have our things for monitoring. We have groups of things for what's known as advisors. And these are rules that you can customize. So you can go in and take a look at things like a heat chart. And these are various sort of conditions and rules that you can monitor. You can enable and disable them as you'd like. You can click on any of these and drill down into them, and it'll give you a description as to what it is, what it's monitoring, and what any sort of advice would be as far as trying to correct it. Across the top here, we could also, with the advisors, you can run schedules, add schedules, manage the rules, do check for updates. The events tab, which, there we go. This allows us to kind of see in real time what's happening with all your queries across your servers. So anything that's becoming a problem, you can drill down on here and see if, as far as like index is not being used efficiently, it'll kind of give you a timestamp as to what's happening with the server, give some advice as to how you might want to rectify this, and then allow you to see if there'd be notifications or recommended actions there. Query Analyzer is becoming one of the more popular ones. A lot of folks want to be able to see what's happening with their servers, their queries. They can drill down on the servers, see specifically what's happening. Looks like we haven't had really any activity on these servers in a little while. But you could also see much of the same information from the Monitor tab here. So what you would see typically for these are memory usage, thread cache sizing, indexing. These are rules that are kind of being violated, and you get a bird's eye view from the heat map as to what's happening across your enterprise. For any of these, you can see what the characteristics of the server are, and be able to, again, drill down from either here or some of these other tabs as to what's going on.
Is it possible to do that per user?
Per user?
Yeah.
You can drill down, I think on one of these, you can see the activity on the user level. It'll tell you what the host is and what machine is causing a problem.
But not what particular user issues.
I think so. Let me check here. Yeah, some of this data isn't fresh. I do know it does tell you at least down to the host level and like where the query came from. So, and I do believe it does capture who the user was at the time. I did see that at one time. I had that question last week actually.
Because sometimes it's interesting to know who is,
Sure.
who is guilty.
Sure, sure.
Especially historically.
Yeah.
Yeah. This also monitors replication. So right from here, you can tell whether your jobs are being replicated, whether the slave is down. Kind of give you up-to-date metrics as to whether it's running or not. Settings allows you to go in and customize all kinds of things. You can then turn on or turn off being notified via email, via pager, SMMP. A lot of sort of very deep set of what you need to configure these rules here. And then things like what's new. So what's new is what's been released, anything here. You'll be able to enter your support credentials and log directly into the support database and if there's a ticket. So that's the Enterprise Monitor. A little bit about the architecture. It's simply agents that are running on the servers. These are written in C and kind of sit there, little daemons monitoring what's going on. Really part of the connectors that it would use to connect. The data is then gone through to the service manager, which also writes it down to the repository in the performance schema, and then that's all displayed on the dashboard using JSP.
It seems like what Nagios is doing.
What's that?
It is similar
Yes.
design in what
Yes.
Nagios
It
is.
is similar to some other tools that are out there. Yeah. Those others. Built-in knowledge base, replication monitor. So the other offering, which is kind of new with Enterprise Backup, was formerly known as InnoDB Hot Backup. Its backup allows not only InnoDB but also MyICM, provides point-in-time recovery, high performance, multi-platform capabilities. And if you compare it to some of the other backup types out there, with MySQL dump sort of being the default, it sort of compares what's good and bad or what's provided here with LVM, Linux Volume Management snapshots, MySQL replication. Number of folks use replication as a backup strategy, as a warm backup. The enterprise backup sort of takes care of a lot of problems that these others just don't address. MySQL Workbench, we spoke of a little earlier, kind of all-in-one tool to do SQL development, database administration, and data modeling. Have anyone downloaded or played with it? Yes, here and there? Okay, a couple here and there. Let me switch over to that.
Does it still have that limitation, so you have to be on that server if you want to get some statistics, or now you can get it from any server? You remember there was a MySQL administrator?
Okay.
Yeah, now it has disappeared. And I wonder, does the Workbench accepted some functionality of like managing as well server, not only just throwing?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, you have when you first log in, you're allowed to manage your servers here and see some of the some server health things, some basic metrics here, some graphs.
And you don't have to be on the local server, you can do it remotely as well.
Yes, yes, you can do it as long as you have connectivity to it. You should be able to pull it across. Yeah.
In fact, one of the connection types now includes SSH as part of the connection protocol.
Right.
So it's
It's
SSH,
yeah.
then it does a port forward inside the SSH, so you don't even have to manage tunnels and port forwarding there.
Yeah, yeah. It's designed to be a little bit more intuitive, more point and click. Runs on Windows. Also runs on I think Ubuntu, certain flavors of Linux. I'm not sure if it runs on all of them. Mac OS, but allows you to first see if your database is up and running, see what your configuration is. If you wanted to quickly look to see whether certain ports are open or what your buffer sizes are, as opposed to rummaging through the config files. You'd have that here. Across the top for under configuration, we have my ISAM parameters, performance metrics, and these are really just ways of editing your my.ini or my.cnf file right from here.
And logs, it also analyzes.
Yeah, there's one step you have to do as far as you have to turn on basically sending the information to the performance schema to the tables. But once that's done, they would be displayed here.
Only through tables, but not the files?
Yeah. Logs can be viewed with the Workbench if they must be configured to be sent to table.
Okay. I see.
So I didn't turn that on for my particular needs, but that's in production. That would be a good thing to have. You can also have things like manage your user. Clearly, I only have root set up here. Connections, what the variable statuses are and stuff. Being able to quickly see what something is set to. Do I have enough memory allocated? That sort of thing. Doing data dump. So from here, a lot of folks, big part of databases is getting data in, but it's also getting it out and getting it out in certain formats. So if you wanted to, dump certain databases, export to a dump file, you can do that, and then you can, do things like dump your views, sort of routines, etc. And you could have multiple tabs across the top here running, and you just kind of, collapse them as needed. Another thing it does here is the data modeling aspect. Taking a look at a data model here. This is a reverse engineer of Tequila, one of the demo databases here. And it allows you to kind of quickly see what your status is with any of this. If you double click on it, it brings up the actual characteristics, what engine is it running on, comments. Down below here you have things like what the columns are, what the indexes are, foreign keys, triggers, is it partitioned, options, privileges. So very, very compact but very useful way of displaying this. Up here you have a nice little sort of zoom, so if you're dealing with a fairly large model you can navigate down around fairly easily. Looking at the trees here, the various things, you can also take a look on the left hand side here and see what your columns are. You could also go through and open an existing model or create a new model if you want to step through and do a reverse engineer. from like an existing database. Kind of walks you through it fairly easily. So I have my 5.5 here. Click next. I've connected to it. You can see which one of these I want to bring in. It retrieves the objects, and then you can execute. All right, and there's the world database here. So again, not a really great example, but very nice for larger databases with foreign keys and stuff. And then finally, SQL development allows us to go in, connect to it. Really designed to help speed up the amount of time it takes to look at tables, to look at various things here. So if I go down to the world database, if I right-click on here, I can select my 1,000 rows. I could also do, right-click here, edit the table, copy to the clipboard. If I want to do some editing or create some new routines, triggers, I can say, give me an insert statement, and I'll give you the template for it. Edit that as I need to, and then continue with my development. Down here you have ways of dealing with the records, fetching records, sorting, ascending, descending, or looking for particular data elements here. And down here you have things along with SQL development for creating new connections, editing your tables, managing your connections, along the thing. And then across the top here we have kind of links right into things like Planet MySQL or the doc library. These are all various plugins that are there, and then you could always either get more or write your own and incorporate them here. So you can go right into utilities right from here if you want to. Close it out, it's still there. So, any questions?
May I ask a question about like future things as well? Or you want to talk first?
Well, I'll just kind of finish, and then we can open it up to, because I'm, curious what everyone else is seeing or doing, or what the perceptions are out there. There's still training and certification for those interested. And then here's kind of a breakdown of the new licensing. It's really come down to standard, enterprise, and cluster for those that are interested. And these are sort of what's available for each version. With the standard, it's MyISAM and NFDB. For enterprise, you also get the Workbench or a license. Now there is a commercial edition as well, but there's also an open source and a commercial. And you also get the monitor and backup. With support, these are the various levels of support that are available, as you go on through here. And then finally the pricing, and this is on the web for standard, $2,000 per server with a 1-to-4 socket. So really this is kind of differentiating based on the class of server, which predominantly are the 1-to-4 socket servers down here, commodity hardware. So you can have, say a 4-way, 16 cores, and it'd still be $2,000 per server for that particular one. The other thing that's interesting is Oracle does not distinguish between physical servers and virtual servers. So if you do have, say, a bigger box, and you're running, 5 or 10 VMs on there, all running MySQL, there's no additional charge for that.
But what if I want to do backup with DB backup and I need multiple copies? Is it still okay?
You would, for backups, any server would be considered to be licensable. Again, it really comes down to you and the account manager and sort of the situation. Okay, so that's really all I had. Any questions? Yeah.
Are these slides online somewhere?
I think they are. There have been webinars. Parts of them are from parts of webinars, parts of them from other presentations here and there. I can make them available I believe that none of them are proprietary at this point.
Yeah, you should, that'd be great.
Yeah,
Okay.
that would be great, yeah.
I
Sherry,
typically
maybe
send
you-
them to Sherry.
Yeah, if you
whenever
send them to
Sherry
me,
does.
that'd be great.
Thanks.
Do you think that upgrade, still keeping the original data, is going to be smooth?
I think so. I personally.
You didn't hear any issues?
Well, there is, I mean, before you do that, there is a laundry list of some changes, like, certain, I know, data types or certain modes and stuff may no longer be supported, so you have to, check that first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions for running MySQL in a virtualized environment?
A lot of folks do it. Sherry, do you?
Yeah, I mean, you just have to know when you have in a virtualized environment what the difference is. So, for example, if you're using Amazon EC2, with say EBS volumes, so that stuff doesn't go away when it restarts. One thing that's important to note is that the disks are network attached, which means that your maximum bandwidth is a little less than what your actual bandwidth is, because it's not just the bandwidth for queries coming in and out, it's the bandwidth for actually writing to the disk. So it's little things like that. There's nothing really new about it, it's just a little different. Just like with flash drives, for example. There's nothing really new about flash drives, it's just a different way of thinking of things, because now you don't have to worry about having things sequential like you do in spinning disks. What's better to have it kind of sequential. So it's nothing really that's, I guess it's not that it's not new, it's not hard. You just have to actually try to know what the pieces are. If you're not using Amazon, it might not be network attached storage, it might be local storage, but they might be doing some kind of a network backup or something. So it's important to know that kind of stuff. Amazon's not very open with the technologies they use, but a lot of people have either figured it out and basically gotten Amazon to say yes, that's it, or whatnot. But yeah, it's basically knowing what you're getting into. Things are elastic, but they're elastic to a point, so it's still pretty much kind of a shared service. It's not really, you're not kind of getting what I would say is real cloud computing, which would be a lot of smaller things coming together to make a bigger service kind of a thing. Just like you have disks and RAID, and you have smaller disks come together and have, bigger volumes, or like a logical volume manager. That's what I'd really like to see with elasticity. But when you have something like the cloud computing, you're elastic to a point, and then you're like, well, it's the maximum for that one physical machine. So there's not necessarily any tips and tricks other than if you are doing something like using Amazon, make sure you have a good backup, make sure you have a good cloning way to do things. For example, if you have a user, you want to make sure, like the MySQL user, you want to make sure the UID and the GID are the same if you have to rebuild it. So you probably want to use some kind of configuration management. That's really going to help you out if you need to clone a server. But that's something that really helps you out if you have physical machines, in your server closet too. It's just that because Amazon servers could restart at any time, and when they restart, only your EBS volumes are going to be preserved, more people have incentive to actually use configuration management tools, like Puppet or CF Engine, for example. So, did that answer the question? And by completely not answering it, did that answer your question?
Part of it, I guess. I'm actually interested in running it within the VMware. Locally.
Just on your locally, you run multiple instances of each one in this particular virtual machine.
Right.
We run into a lot of
Yeah,
disk
there are
I/O
some.
issues with that because
Exactly.
we've given 4 different developer machines, and then 3 or 4 people do some big queries on 1 or 2 instances, and nobody can write to any of the databases because the I/O is all locked up. So you do have that kind of a problem.
And even measurements are kind of tricky, because now what does it mean when you measure things? You have one machine, but when it measures, it tells you kind of things not really realistic ones.
I actually just got an email during this thing from VMstat about MySQL running on I/O problems.
I/O
During
is a
this
huge
thing.
There you go. I didn't lie.
But it's nothing about MySQL. It is
Yeah.
Right.
run Postgres will be the same thing.
Right. It's you're running a lot of heavy I/O instances of things, and so it's gonna, it can be problematic.
People think about sharing CPU, but they don't understand they share I/O as well,
Yes.
even
Right.
more than.
Yeah, and
Right.
they can be very slow very quickly.
Well, that's why a lot of times VM consolidation tended to be in low volume machines.
Yes,
You know, now people are
right.
trying to put big
Right.
volume machines, and like
Right.
at work, they were
Exactly.
talking about like, okay, now that we bought an older 2-socket, dual core machine, they're like, oh, well, if we buy one Nehalem with 8 cores, 1 core of that might be the equivalent of a couple cores from years ago, so if we just run it in VM instead, that's one of the things that we might be looking at.
Yeah.
But it's like, as you consolidate down, like on our compute cluster, we collapsed nodes, but it's like, okay, but they still have the same gigabit. Now 8 nodes had 8 gigabit Ethernet links going into them. Now I have 8 cores with 1 gigabit link going into them.
Right, exactly.
Just the opposite of MySQL, you're creating a bottleneck
Yeah,
instead of.
exactly.
Right.
Well, the flip side, the way they solve that problem at my work is they used a Clarion storage SAN.
Yeah, no,
And
we
that's
have-
using fiber channel and they're doing 10G between that and the box.
Yeah, exactly.
And
You
it has
can-
like
you can-
36 disks in it. So it but the problem is as you add more connections on one side, you have to make sure you make
Oh,
enough,
definitely, yeah.
enough multiplexing for the other side, enough capacity.
Yeah. But I mean, MySQL works really well with multiple instances. So you could just have different instances on different ports, or just have a whole bunch of IP addresses on a machine, and so they can also be port 3306. It's just which is listening on which IP interface. And that actually makes it a whole lot easier to administer and everything. And you still can run into, memory, CPU, I/O problems, but it's not as much we found as with the VM. Because I think part of the problem is when they know it's shared, like it's obvious it's shared because, hey, I'm on port 3308 and that's the fourth one, there's 3306, 07, 08, 09, they're kind of more aware of it. Whereas if you're like, oh, here's your machine, they're just like, well, I'll beat the hell out of it. I'll just do whatever I want because it's my machine, but it's not really. It's still virtualized out. So
And there are some resource thresholding things you can do in VM. I don't know if they have ever added I/O yet, but they did have like some CPU thresholds and how eager it is to use memory or not. And there's also some thresholds you can set for like affinities of make sure these two VMs don't run on the same physical host, or flip side, make sure they do. So if you have a couple MySQL VMs and they're all very heavy, you might want to spread those across a couple actual physical hosts, so that they're not like four busy MySQL VMs running on the same box, and then you wonder why that machine, all the VMs tank, when you can spread it across the 4 machines. It'll still HA if one of them dies, but it'll try and keep them separated.
Question about some of the partitioning improvements in 5.5. So as I said, I'm coming from 5.0, so I don't have any partitioning.
Yeah.
But there's some tables I have that I want to partition by day.
Yep.
As I understand, that's easier in 5.5 than it was in 5.1.
Yeah, there is, right, there is some of it in 5.1. 5.1 kind of made sure that whatever you are returning, as long as you're returning some sort of integer value, you're fine. You're fine. 5.5 makes it easier. You can expand into different types of partitioning and be a little bit more explicit. Giuseppe Maxa has a really good article on it out there if you want to take a look as far as what he's done in 5.5 and some of the things that are there.
Yeah, I think that's something I'm going to start doing soon. So also, what's the best practice if I have a big table that I want to partition? Is it better to partition it in place, or should I sort of create a new copy of the table that's partitioned and then shuttle the data over?
doesn't really matter.
Yeah. I would think
It's kind of like saying, is it better if you need to add a column? Should you make a new table and add the column there and then insert the data, or should you just alter the table?
Yeah.
So,
So it's
you
it's
know,
a matter of how much I need the data available. And
yeah,
how much
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
How big is your table? Because I have the same problem.
I mean, the biggest one is probably about 40 gig.
Yeah. I don't know, and I don't know if they've changed it in 5.5, by the way, but I remember in 5.1 we did some testing of inserts, and when you insert data, it doesn't really do the push-down optimization on the insert. It actually will lock all of the partition files to insert
Even
one
which
thing,
one-
so you
which
can't
you
really
don't-
insert in parallel.
Don't use, yeah.
But they're physically separate files, so it's like, why would you do that?
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I'm more looking for the ability to drop old partitions more easily.
Right, right.
improving and stuff.
Because I'm usually just inserting a new, one new day of data.
All right, well,
Okay.
that's it. That's
All
it. We're quiet and tired, and
Yeah, get home.
means you answered all of our questions,
Okay,
so
well.
that's good. Good, means we're satisfied.
Yeah.
We hope.